The feds call it a washout, but veteran cops aren't buying it one bit. Everything hinges on a tight 8-minute window. This isn't just speculation. We're talking hard video evidence of cars slipping out the back way from Nancy Guthrie's subdivision right when detectives think she was snatched. An ex-NYPD detective has gone on record claiming he nailed the specific make and model of one ride after picking apart the footage frame by frame. Then you have an FBI insider leaking word to the press just hours later that the clip has absolutely zero connection to the abduction, waved off overnight while she's been gone 27 days. The math just feels wrong. Nearly a month into the biggest manhunt Arizona has ever seen, the anomalies are starting to scream louder than the facts. Real quick before we dive in, if you're tracking this story and need the latest breaks as they happen, hit subscribe and ring that bell. We don't do wild guessing games here. We stick to cold hard evidence, official releases, and the holes in the police narrative. Everything I tell you comes with receipts. We verify every single timeline. Any question we raise is grounded in what the cops have actually confirmed or what legitimate reporters have dug up. Smash that like button if you believe the public has a right to know the truth in investigations like this. Because the details I'm about to lay out prompt questions that detectives will eventually have to address, whether they feel like it or not. Let's kick things off with the statement the Bureau dropped to TMZ earlier today. Their insider claims that Ring video catching 12 cars cruising through the Catalina foothills from midnight to 6 in the morning on February 1st is, quote, a dead end. The contact explained that the specific roads these drivers used, along with their entry and exit points, convinced the agency that none of these vehicles had anything to do with snatching Nancy Guthrie. That declaration hit the news this morning. Since Fox News Digital only broke the story on the footage yesterday evening, the FBI must have processed this evidence, mapped the paths, vetted the cars, and came to a rock-solid verdict in less than 12 hours. 12 hours. That is suspicious speed for a team that spent 27 days knocking on doors, watching endless security tapes, and chasing down over 21,000 leads. Now, let's look at exactly what the feds dismissed so fast. This video comes from a Ring setup belonging to Elias and Danielle Stratagalas, who live right there in the Catalina foothills near Nancy. Their place is on North Camino Real, a quiet backstreet about 2.5 miles from Nancy's house. The camera logged movement between midnight and 6 in the morning on February 1st. The bulk of that traffic happened right around 2:30. And let me tell you, 2:30 in the morning is not just some random timestamp. Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker quit syncing with her iPhone at exactly 2:28 that morning, a detail Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos put on the public record. Detectives figure that 2:28 mark is the precise moment Nancy was either hauled out of her house or when someone intentionally cut her pacemaker's Bluetooth link. No matter how you slice it, 2:28 is the most critical minute in this whole case. Now watch this. The Stratagalas camera caught a car rolling past their driveway at 2:31. That is just 3 minutes after the pacemaker went dark. Then it snagged a second vehicle at 2:36. 8 minutes post-disconnect. 8 minutes, one lonely road, and absolutely no answers. If you grabbed Nancy Guthrie at 2:28 and needed to ghost out of the neighborhood without hitting big intersections or traffic cams, North Camino Real is the exact path you'd pick. And 8 minutes is pretty much exactly how long it takes to cruise from Nancy's place to the Stratagalas residence. Fox News Digital verified with the family that their home is roughly a 7-minute drive from Nancy's house under regular conditions. At 2:30 in the morning with zero traffic, you could make that run even faster. As for the route itself, Fox reports that it feeds right out of the Catalina foothills while dodging all the major intersections. This isn't a main artery. It's not a road anyone uses unless they live there or they're specifically trying to stay off the grid and avoid surveillance. Now, here is where the story gets even messier. The Stratagalas property is located about 2.5 miles from the crime scene. When the Bureau first swept the neighborhood looking for security footage, they blasted ring alerts to homeowners within a 2-mile radius of Nancy's address, asking for any clips recorded between January 1st and February 2nd. The Stratagalas house was just outside that bubble. Nobody from the police ever reached out. Nobody asked to see their video. Not a single badge knocked on their door to ask if they'd witnessed anything strange. Danielle Stratagalas told Fox News Digital that she and her husband thought it was bizarre that cops hadn't visited their block at all in the nearly 4 weeks since Nancy vanished. She mentioned that the volume of cars passing through that night wasn't really out of the ordinary for the area, but when she and a friend decided to check their Ring history after hearing about the case, the timing caught their eye, and they called the authorities. That is the only reason this video ever saw the light of day. It wasn't thanks to methodical FBI fieldwork, but because worried neighbors checked their own systems and flagged something they thought mattered. Let's take a beat here because this is huge. The FBI has repeatedly told the public they're combing through tens of thousands of hours of security tape. Authorities have consistently flagged the collection and deep analysis of surveillance tape as the absolute backbone of this entire investigation. Just yesterday, a bureau spokesperson revealed to the press that the agency has stockpiled a staggering 10,000 hours of video, all vetted by federal agents. However, the single most critical clip capturing a car slipping out the back of Nancy's subdivision right when her heart monitor went dark was somehow missed by the bureau. That vital piece of evidence was actually unearthed by locals living just beyond the official search perimeter who decided to take matters into their own hands. So let us take a much closer look at that mysterious vehicle that cruised by at exactly 2:36 in the morning. Pat Brown, a retired detective from the New York Police Department, carefully examined the doorbell video and shared his professional breakdown with national media. Brown suggests the car in question looks exactly like a Kia Soul, pointing to the sloping roofline, the window shape, and those distinct vertical taillights. This man is not just some random armchair sleuth. He spent decades working the streets and solving cases with law enforcement in the Big Apple. He is an expert at breaking down security tape, and he is stating on the record that he identified the car leaving Nancy's area just 8 minutes after her device went offline. It is the car officials refuse to discuss. But if Brown is right, detectives have a very precise target vehicle they should be hunting down right now. While the Kia Soul is not the most ubiquitous ride on the streets, it is unique enough that tracking down sales records and vehicle registrations would be easy. Pinpointing ownership within the greater Tucson region would honestly be a fairly standard and manageable task for any competent investigative team. The Bureau already announced they are collaborating with retailers to track down whoever bought that specific backpack spotted on the camera at Nancy's house. You could apply that exact same strategy to the car. Just cross-reference the county vehicle registrations with the timeline of the disappearance. Filter the list to see which of those compact SUV owners have any known ties or business connections near the Catalina Foothills district. Whittle it down even more by checking cell tower pings and travel routes from the night of February 1st. This is police work 1-to-1. Despite all that potential, the feds immediately dismissed the clip as irrelevant to the investigation, and you have to ask yourself why. How could they possibly determine in under 12 hours that a car on an escape path during the abduction window meant absolutely nothing? Officials have stayed silent on the details, telling reporters only that their entry and exit analysis somehow cleared those vehicles of suspicion. However, the residents who actually live there and drive those streets every single day are telling a very different story to the press. They insisted to news outlets that North Camino Real is definitely a viable back exit, leading straight out of Nancy's subdivision. Jim Clemente, a former criminal profiler and supervisory special agent with the Bureau, spoke to the network earlier this week about this specific issue. He emphasized that soliciting tips from the general public remains one of the most powerful tools available for shrinking the list of potential suspects. Clemente argued investigators should ask anyone driving there between 1 and 3 a.m. on February 1st to come forward, regardless of what they saw. He pointed out that if they identify the drivers and one of them refuses to step up voluntarily, that hesitation becomes a massive red flag. It turns out Clemente is not the only industry veteran scratching his head at how quickly this evidence was tossed aside by the team. Several retired officers expressed shock to the media that the agency would discard clues so fast while claiming they are chasing every lead. Meanwhile, the local sheriff's department in Pima County has weighed in on the current status of the ongoing search effort. They stated just 2 days back that the case is still fully active and will not close until Nancy is found or every option is drained. Ignoring video of cars on a getaway path just 8 minutes after the victim's heart monitor stopped does not look like exhausting all leads. In fact, to many seasoned observers watching this case unfold, it looks like they are doing the exact opposite. I need to take you through the chronology again because the timing here is far too precise to just brush under the rug. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker abruptly ceased its synchronization with her smartphone. Authorities believe this is the exact instant she was taken from the house, or when someone manually cut the device's connection. Then at 2:31 a.m., the first car rolls past that neighbor's house on North Camino Real. That is 3 minutes post-event. Then at 2:36 a.m., a second car passes the same spot just 8 minutes later. You really need to stop and look at those timestamps one more time. If you are snatching someone from a quiet suburb in the dark, you avoid main drags and dodge intersections rigged with traffic cams. You stay off the routes where witnesses might spot you or where automated license plate readers could ping your location. You stick to the back roads and choose the paths that offer the least amount of exposure to the public eye. A calculated perp uses 2 cars, one to haul the victim, and a trail car to watch for trouble or help if things go south. We have 2 separate vehicles slipping out of Nancy's area within 8 minutes of her medical device going silent. Taking a back exit that bypasses major crossroads is not definitive proof of a crime, strictly speaking, but it is undeniably a lead that demands a deep dive rather than being waved off overnight, and that is the contradiction. The feds are calling it a dead end, while the locals are screaming that it is a clear escape route. Veteran detectives will tell you that a recognizable car combined with a specific time frame demands serious attention, but there is more to this story. Fox News Digital also broke the news that a neighbor in the vicinity spotted a shady character on February 2nd, the very day after Nancy vanished. This witness pegged the guy at roughly 5 to 9, Hispanic, sporting a neatly trimmed beard and rocking a silver bracelet on his wrist. He was puffing on a cigarette and lurking near what looked like a junked car right around the bend from North Camino Real. That 5 to 9 height aligns perfectly with the description the FBI released regarding the suspect caught on the doorbell footage. The Bureau described that suspect as a male standing somewhere between 5 to 9 and 5 to 10 with a medium build. This sighting went down on February 2nd, which would be the day following the abduction, assuming the kidnappers used North Camino Real to flee. Doubling back the next day to grab a vehicle or check if the police had burned, their route would not be weird at all. Perpetrators have a habit of returning to the scene. They revisit dump sites and locations tied to their dirty work because they are paranoid about whether investigators are on their trail. The local who clocked this guy said he stuck out like a sore thumb because he wasn't dressed for a neighborhood stroll. He didn't look like a jogger. He was just loitering by an abandoned ride in a spot where folks rarely walk. Think about that description. A man matching the FBI's physical profile standing exactly where the getaway cars were spotted 24 hours prior is huge. It is a puzzle piece that fits. And it is yet another detail that, as far as the public knows, the FBI has not addressed in any official capacity. But wait, there is more. Fox News reported another neighbor saw a mystery man in mid-January walking near a junction that feeds into Nancy Guthrie's street. The resident noted that the stranger wasn't wearing your typical walking gear. With his hat pulled low over his eyes and a youthful vibe, he didn't look like someone out for a casual breath of fresh air. The witness had never crossed paths with this individual before that day, nor have they seen him since. Mid-January is weeks before Nancy went missing, but it tracks perfectly with the creepy pattern surfacing in this case. It screams surveillance, reconnaissance, and pre-operational planning. The FBI dropped video from January 23rd, showing someone walking backward down a street near Nancy's house. Experts say that behavior is textbook for someone running counter-surveillance or testing police response times. If a suspicious figure was lurking in mid-January with his face hidden and no reason to be there, it implies the stalking started way before the 23rd, so you have to step back and look at the big picture. Mid-January. A weird guy near the home. January 23rd. The backward walker running recon. February 1st. 2 cars on a back road at 2:30 in the morning, just 8 minutes after her pacemaker flatlined. February 2nd. A man matching the suspect profile is spotted by a junked car on that same back road. Every single data point suggests a professional job by a crew that studied the neighborhood, the routes, and the timing for weeks. Yet, the FBI hasn't publicly connected these dots. They haven't confirmed if the mid-January lurker, the backward walker from the 23rd, the figure on the doorbell cam, and the guy from February 2nd are the same person. But the public is making those connections, and the timeline backs them up way more than it refutes them. Now, let's talk about the FBI's excuse for ignoring the North Camino Real footage. Sources claim they likely used geofencing to check the cars on the Ring video. Geofencing lets investigators subpoena cell carriers for a list of devices active in a specific zone at a set time. If the feds drew a digital fence around that road between 2 and 3 in the morning on February 1st, they would get a hit on every single phone that pinged a tower in that area during that window. From there, detectives can ID the owners, cross-reference them with vehicle registrations, and potentially clear each car based on where the driver was headed or coming from. If all 12 vehicles in the video linked to active phones whose owners were contacted and cleared, then the FBI would have a solid reason to toss that footage aside. The snag is that the Stratagalas family says cops didn't reach out until after Fox News aired the story, meaning the FBI hadn't been there. They hadn't pulled that video, and they didn't even know that road was a potential escape route until yesterday. And here is the other kicker. If the suspects were pro enough to stake out the place for weeks, disable the doorbell camera, and time their approach perfectly to stay off the radar, snatching an 84-year-old lady from her residence in the dead of night without alerting a single soul requires extreme precision. You better believe these perpetrators were savvy enough to leave their mobile devices far away from the crime scene. Federal agents publicly verified that the digital airwaves around Nancy's estate were dead silent when it mattered most, proving the culprits went totally unconnected. Chances are high they relied on old-school walkie-talkies or maintained absolute radio silence to avoid detection. Since the abductors weren't carrying trackable tech, a geofence warrant is useless for catching them and only flags the 10 or 11 random folks passing through on totally separate business. Simply clearing those 10 innocent commuters does not automatically eliminate the darker alternative. It is entirely possible that 1 or 2 of the 12 cars caught on tape were driven by pros who intentionally scrubbed their digital footprint. Retired bureau profiler Jim Clemente hammered this specific detail home during his recent television appearance. He argued that if a couple of those rides on the video lack telematics data or cell signals, that absence of evidence is actually a massive red flag, mainly because legitimate drivers at 2:30 in the morning practically always have their phones. Modern vehicles come standard with navigation systems, and most are hooked up to OnStar or similar tracking networks. When a car shows up on video but has zero digital footprint to match, that ride needs to become your prime suspect immediately, not get tossed aside as background noise. The lightning-fast speed at which they dismiss this lead is what really triggers the alarm bells here. We are talking less than 12 hours between the news outlet dropping the story and a bureau source leaking to the tabloids that it was a total dead end. Imagine having just 12 hours to map the zone, tag every pinging device, and hunt down the owners, validate their alibis, check their vehicle registrations against the database, and say with 100% certainty that none of those 12 cars were involved in Nancy's kidnapping. That would be a miraculous feat of detective work. For that to be true, every single car on that tape would need a matching phone signal, every driver would have to answer their phone instantly, and every excuse they gave would need immediate verification. Relying on that many best-case scenarios is a huge gamble, especially when you stack it against the rest of the case timeline. Agents spent weeks just salvaging the doorbell video because the back-end data needed a full reconstruction after the device was smashed. Recovering that data required serious man-hours and expert skills, while the DNA from that glove found 2 miles away was run through CODIS, the National Genetic Database, and came back with 0 hits, meaning that evidence is now stuck in the long queue for forensic genetic genealogy, which drags on for months. Officials have told the public they are sifting through 10,000 hours of surveillance tapes, a massive chore that forces agents to watch in real time because hitting the fast-forward button risks skipping vital clues. Real detective work is a slow grind of careful analysis, yet somehow, 12 vehicles speeding down an escape path just 8 minutes after her heart stopped were cleared in a single night. This contradiction is nearly impossible to ignore, so let me touch on what the authorities didn't actually say. They never claimed they reviewed the footage and found nothing. They stated that an analysis of entry and exit points led them to believe the cars were unconnected, which is very specific phrasing. That implies their decision was based on the geography of the road itself, rather than actually identifying and clearing the specific drivers. However, locals who drive those streets every day have gone on record stating that North Camino Real definitely offers a way out of the foothills. The news reports characterized it as a quiet back road that conveniently bypasses all the major traffic lights. That insight came directly from the community on the ground, not from wild internet theories. If the official dismissal relies on the idea that this road isn't a viable getaway route, they are directly contradicting the people who actually live there. On the flip side, if they claim they really did identify and clear all 12 vehicles, they haven't explained how they pulled off that miracle so fast, or why not a single one of those drivers has spoken up to say they were interviewed. Another massive loose end is the second ride, since that doorbell cam spotted 2 cars rolling by back-to-back at 2:31 and 2:36 in the morning. If you were planning a complex snatch and grab with a crew, bringing 2 cars is just smart logistics. The lead car handles the transport of the target. The chase car trails behind to watch for tails, block any pursuit, or just put some highway between the suspect and the cargo if the cops show up early. Seeing two cars exit a neighborhood via the back door minutes apart isn't a smoking gun for conspiracy, but it fits the profile of organized crime perfectly, and it is exactly the kind of clue that demands a deeper look rather than a quick brush-off. The sheriff told the press earlier this week that they are narrowing down the clothing details from the video, specifically the shoes, pants, shirt, and jacket the perp was wearing. He mentioned that detectives are reaching out to brands and stores to pinpoint exactly where that gear was sold. Now that is the kind of methodical, brick-by-brick police work that actually makes sense. It is slow, it is obsessive about the details, and it is the bedrock of how you actually solve a case like this. If deputies are burning daylight tracing where a pair of sneakers came from, it makes zero sense for the feds to trash dashcam video from a getaway path in under 12 hours. These priorities are completely out of whack. Either that tape holds water and actually matters, meaning it demands the same microscopic scrutiny applied to every other clue, or it is total junk, forcing the Bureau to explicitly state why the timestamp, the specific road, and the car make spotted by an ex-cop do not matter. We are 27 days into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Her loved ones just dropped a $1 million bounty for any intel that finds her, breathing or not. Savannah Guthrie hit Instagram yesterday with a gut-wrenching plea for witnesses to step up. She stated, "A person out there holds the key to bringing her back. Somebody is aware. We are down on our knees asking you to talk right now." Local officials verified this week that the file is still open and manpower is shifting back to the lead investigators. Federal agents have transferred a chunk of their command center up to Phoenix, while keeping a dedicated strike team locally in Tucson. Officials claim they are still chasing down every solid tip. However, promising avenues are being shut down in less than a 12-hour window. Cameras catching traffic on a prime exit road during the crucial window are getting scrapped before the community even hears about them. An expert witness is getting the cold shoulder, and locals who know every twist of that asphalt are being told their knowledge of the entry points is dead wrong. Something smells fishy. Given that an 84-year-old lady who can barely walk has vanished for a month, any math that does not check out needs a double check. Let me be crystal clear about my point here and avoid any confusion. I am not claiming the feds blew it. I am not stating those cars on the tape are 100% linked to the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. I am not pointing fingers or alleging a botched job or some conspiracy. My issue is that the haste and confidence used to trash this clue clashes with the slow, deliberate pace seen everywhere else in this case. Whenever you see a disconnect like that, it begs for a real answer. Folks deserve to hear how agents got to that verdict. Did they tag every single car? Did they speak to every registered owner? Did any of those rides go dark without cell signals or satellite tracking? Could those motorists prove exactly why they were cruising that street at that specific moment? Asking this is just common sense. These are the inquiries any reporter or worried neighbor would raise when told key proof was dumped without a peep. If the Bureau is right and that video clip is truly a dead end, then showing their work on how they decided that would really boost trust in the process. But if they messed up or rushed the call, taking a second look at that tape could blow this entire mystery wide open. Regardless, keeping quiet doesn't help. Nancy Guthrie needs us to do better. Her kin needs us to do better. And the community that has phoned in over 21,000 leads and watched this tragedy with eagle eyes has earned the right to know why footage that looks so promising is being tossed in the bin without a reason. This story isn't finished. The hunt goes on. And the doubts about that video are not vanishing. If you saw any cars moving through the Catalina foothills during the early hours of February 1st, call the feds. If you drive a Kia Soul and were rolling through that zone, call it in, even if you think you had nothing to do with it. And if you have a clue, even a tiny one, regarding the fate of Nancy Guthrie, speak up immediately. Hit subscribe on this page to catch the news as it breaks. Ring the bell and send this clip to everyone tracking this mystery because honesty and answers are non-negotiable. When the clock is ticking, dumping clues in a 12-hour span with zero context is something that people are entitled to challenge. Nancy Guthrie has been gone for 27 days. Somebody holds the answer, and that person is viewing this video exactly like you are. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 27 days. New video evidence has emerged, and the questions it raises are not going away. A Ring camera captured 12 vehicles moving through the Catalina foothills between midnight and 6 in the morning on February 1st during the same window. Investigators believe Nancy was taken. A retired NYPD detective reviewed the footage frame by frame and identified the specific make and model of one vehicle. Hours later, The FBI dismissed the entire clip as a dead end with no public explanation. The timeline demands attention. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with her phone. At 2:31, the first car rolled past. At 2:36, a second vehicle followed the same back route. 3 minutes after the abduction signal, 8 minutes total, 2 vehicles using a back road that bypasses major intersections, traffic cameras, and license plate readers, exactly the route a calculated perpetrator would choose. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente said investigators should identify every driver who traveled that road between 1 and 3 in the morning. If someone refuses to come forward voluntarily, that hesitation itself becomes a significant red flag. Discarding a lead in under 12 hours without public explanation, while simultaneously claiming every avenue is being exhausted, is a contradiction that seasoned investigators and community members are right to question. Residents who live on North Camino Real confirmed to news outlets that the road is a genuine back exit out of Nancy Guthrie's subdivision. Local knowledge and federal conclusions are pointing in opposite directions. In high-profile disappearances, the most important leads are often the ones that seem too precise to be coincidence. Timing, routing, and the absence of a public explanation are evidence even when officials call something a dead end. If you drove through the Catalina foothills between 1 and 3 in the morning on February 1st, even if you believe you have no relevant information, contact the FBI and let investigators make that determination. If you drove a Kia Soul or any vehicle through that area that night, coming forward proactively removes you from suspicion and helps investigators confirm or eliminate every lead still on the board. If you know someone who was in that area that night and has not reported it, or who suddenly changed their behavior after February 1st, that information belongs with investigators, not kept in silence. Call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or contact the Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900. Anonymous tips are accepted. Over 21,000 leads have already been submitted, and every one of them matters. A reward of $1.2 million remains available for information leading to Nancy Guthrie's recovery. The case is active. The Pima County Sheriff has confirmed it will not close until Nancy is found. Share this case. The community watching this investigation has earned the right to answers. Every share keeps pressure on the process and increases the chance that someone connects a vehicle, a route, or a face to the evidence. 27 days, 12 cars, an 8-minute window, a lead dismissed without explanation. The questions are not disappearing, and neither is the search for Nancy Guthrie. Somewhere in this city, the person who took Nancy Guthrie is watching the same coverage the rest of us are watching. The difference is, they know what those 2 cars on North Camino Real were doing, and so might someone who knows them.